Have you ever looked back at a year and thought to yourself, my life looks nothing like it did from the year prior, and I feel like a totally different person? That's personally how I feel after going through the year of being 42. I just turned 43, so I wanted to reflect back on being 42, and there was sort of a joke of like, is 42 when you discover the meaning of life? I don't know if I've discovered the meaning exactly, but by far, I do believe this year was the largest in personal growth and development and discovery and just so many things coming together, so much learning. Well, I said this is a crochet in chat, which I guess isn't technically false. I do have crocheted items. I have a pile of dishcloths that I have been working on that all need ends woven in. So I figured I can talk to you and weave in ends. So I just wanted to chat about being 42 and what I think I really discovered about myself along the way. Some of the lessons I do wish, part of me feels like it would have been nice to learn them sooner, but I don't know if I would have been able to take those lessons the same way. So I do feel like if you believe in God or higher power, that things do happen on a timetable for a specific reason, and when we're ready to receive those. And so in a way, like I can say I kind of wish I knew some of these things sooner or felt this way sooner about things. But this is just how it was meant to be. And I have the lessons and I'm totally fine with it. So one of the biggest lessons in being 42 was I thought I had done a decent job of this, but I got a whole heck of a lot better about it. And that is setting boundaries and sticking to them and not feeling the need to explain myself. And sometimes it's less about the boundary and more about like making yourself scarce or just saying you can't do something if, say, you're avoiding certain people or whatever. And in particular, in my work life, I wish I wouldn't have needed my boss to set the boundary for me. But unfortunately, there has been a situation that had been brewing before earlier, early in my being 42, which was there was a toxic situation that I was in the general vicinity of, and it was getting to the point where I was struggling with my work and getting stuff done. And I felt like every time we would have a one-on-one, I'm like, okay, but like I know these are the things we planned on getting done this week, but there was this going on and this distraction and commotion. And it eventually turned into, he decided it would be best if I change what floor I work on, which I was very resistant to. In fact, even I had come off of vacation and they said, hey, go ahead and feel free to move your desk. And I was kind of teed off because I'm like, well, but you didn't really ask me, I feel like. And I thought I had made it clear, like, let me go on vacation and clear my head and it'll be fine. However, it took me about a week or two and to kind of come to terms with it, but I really do think he had the right idea in protecting my personal inner peace, which is, another lesson is that it is okay to protect your inner peace. And it's really interesting because we made that boundary shift and by like creating a physical boundary of some of these other departments that would just come and either become a distraction or try to get me to stop what I was doing to work on the thing that they would want me to work on. And some, fictitious emergency or you know what this types of scenarios that can happen. There's a reason that like the corporate life reels that are funny pop off and they're popular. It's because they're largely true for a lot of places in corporate America. It was that situation. I think some of my work friends were exploiting my friendship to a certain degree and trying to get me to do the things that they wanted to have done. And, we're a very lean department. We just didn't have the resources to do everything, unfortunately. I mean, we still don't. We added another temporary that I believe we might end up actually hiring on, which I'm very happy about. But anyway, it's unfortunate it got to the point of physical boundaries, even though I had verbalized and tried to set verbal boundaries prior to this, but they kept getting steamrolled. And he was like, yeah, let's remove the situation. And then there was a situation where one of them had come upstairs and raised a commotion, at least for that particular floor, because it tends to be a pretty quiet floor for the most part. And he was like, oh, hey, sorry you got yelled at. And I'm like, that was not yelling. Are you kidding me? Like, for this person? And he was like, oh my goodness, we should have moved you sooner. That's insane. So it was one of those situations where I'm like, I really just needed to learn it's okay to like walk away from things. And like, obviously, like, I couldn't make the choice necessarily to move. Like, if there wouldn't have been anywhere for me to move to, I would have probably had to suck it up and deal with it. But it carried over the lesson into other parts of my life. And I'm like, but why do I like have my coworkers on my personal Facebook, social media, that kind of stuff? So I started cleaning that kind of stuff out. Like, it was really making sure I was protecting my peace and just carrying that over in other areas, and not just my coworkers, but I was looking at other people in my social media, and I've done this before. And this is a way that, unfortunately, I have lost friends where I'm like, or at least I, and it was my choice, like, that I was like, I don't need this person in my life, because the only time I hear from them are they need something or they want to argue on social media. That's it. They don't want to hang out. They don't want to celebrate the good stuff or laugh along when something funny happens or whatever. They just wanted to be a vampire, like just a suck of energy and a thief of joy. Where are my scissors? I need scissors. So I started kind of re-evaluating some of that again, making sure that I was surrounding the people in my life that I wanted, to be around. And part of that is recognizing when someone is being dismissive or invalidating. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, this can be in the form of family, and obviously like friends, that some of them I was like, you're really not helping me. So I don't need someone in my life that's going to take away from my life. I'm only interested in people who are going to add value into my life. Anyone who is dismissive or invalidating of your feelings, I don't think has a place at your table, honestly. And I know you can't necessarily always, if it's a family member or something, you can't always mitigate that or whatever, other than, there's things that I just don't tell people anymore. And I'm okay with that too. That sounds terrible, like I'm hiding stuff or whatever, but just because I've known you for a certain amount of time, or, maybe we're somehow distantly related or not so distantly related, depending on your situation, I just tell you the surface level stuff and that's it. And honestly, it's been working out pretty good for me. I don't tell certain people when I have a bad day at work, because I don't want to hear well, just be thankful you have a job, or like all the toxic positivity crap. Not worth it. I'm not interested in any of that. I think it is very important, the more I'm learning how to manage my emotions, to also learn how to sit in your emotions and understand what those emotions are trying to tell you and signal to you. There is actually a book that I started reading on this, and I believe it's just called Master Your Emotions. And that's what it was telling me. It's like, those emotions are telling me, if you make me feel sucky when I try to tell you stuff, I don't tell you stuff anymore. So, how did I lose my scissors? Oh, okay. Oh, jeez. And some of this stuff may somewhat relate to one of my biggest discoveries in turning 42 was I knew something hadn't been right, and I couldn't quite place my finger on it. So I did get evaluated and initially was diagnosed with ADHD, which I don't think is false. And it's not I think I would have struggled with it in the past as far as had I been diagnosed, in the sense of like I wouldn't have gotten it because to me, like the ADHD that I had seen in the past had largely been in boys and men. And it's like that high energy, just high, I don't want to say chaos, but like it's just a very outward, I don't think I'm explaining myself very well, but it's just that very high energy, just where I'm not that way. But then when I looked back on it, I'm like, oh, I did, in my younger years, I was constantly like doing that like leg thing that you're bouncing. I always feel like I have about 100 browser tabs open in my head at all times. Like I'm constantly cycling around different thoughts. Just there's a lot of things that go into ADHD. And then later on, as the year progressed, I heard about like these late diagnoses for autism, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. I'll give it a listen and see what that's all about. And someone put up the DSM-5, I believe it is, where it's basically the diagnostic parameters of what autism are, and I was like, oh, well, I hit all of the, like, you have to have these groupings in all but one of the most like some combination of the secondary characteristics. And then I realized, oh, the secondary characteristic that I didn't think I had is there. It presents very differently from what classically you would think of. I guess to explain it and illustrate it, it's the echolalia. So typically it's when someone would echo or, repeat, either words or phrases or something over and over. And I have noticed I tend to either duplicate my story by like almost recapping it at the end. Also, another thing that I tend to do, and I've really been working on it, and I feel like I've gotten so much better in the last couple of years, which is why I think I didn't notice it right away, is particularly in my family, I have a tendency to pick up on I don't want to say an affectation, but it's like I would create the affectation of like how someone speaks, some of their speech patterns, their voice, their pitch in their voice, stuff like that. So when I thought about it that way, I'm like, oh, I do somewhat echo or mirror or repeat. It's just different than someone repeating the same words or phrases over and over in the, I don't want to say higher levels of autism, but basically the ones that you tend to think about more. I can't think, the Good Doctor. So like when you think about the Good Doctor, like that's not an exaggerated portrayal. It's just a different level of autism that they are portraying in that particular TV show. So when you see stuff like that, I think that is, it's good because it's like you almost want the awareness and the inclusion, but then like for someone like me, who is essentially a level 1, it gets missed more because even when I shared this with someone I'm really close to, they're like, oh, no, you're not. And it's like, this is why it gets missed, because you're only understanding certain types and levels of autism. And so then the like lower levels aren't as detected. And like, so it's just a whole thing. So that was a lot of learning that and learning about ways I can accommodate my day, like setting up boundaries, making sure I take breaks from people, different characteristics. I still will typically mask throughout the day at work. And what masking is downplaying all of your tendencies, for lack of a better word, and trying to seem as like normal or neurotypical as possible. I don't feel the need to, I don't want to say be more myself. I would rather, I'm comfortable masking throughout the day and just, it's fine. And the people at work that know me well enough to where I would share this with them, they're fine. They're not going to like run and tell other people. So, and if they do, oh well. I personally did not put it on record with HR or anything like that. And there's certain people I certainly wouldn't share it with. And it's largely because I did get in touch with others who also were either late diagnosis or maybe they had autism this whole time. And just understanding accommodations, because I never understood accommodations before. Oh, already wove that in. Nice. Where they also felt similar in work of my suspicion. They confirmed my suspicion, which was if I put this on file at work, either I could see one of two scenarios happening, possibly both, depending on the person. Either I was going to get treated with kid gloves and babied, which I don't want special treatment in that sense. I'm still an adult. I can still provide value and contribute to the company. I think the bigger fear also on that is having it be weaponized. And I don't know how to explain what I mean by having it weaponized, but I have also heard stories from other people in the community where they're like, yeah, people absolutely did enough within the bounds of HR to try to push me out or like to try to make me miserable every day without being obvious. And it's just a very uncomfortable situation. And I don't want that either. So I would rather go on trying to be as normal as humanly possible throughout the day. And, you know, my boss just thinks I'm a little bit more sensitive or whatever, and that's okay. And I'm okay with that. And that's a personal choice I'm willing to make. And I do feel like there is a place where you could put it on record. And it's not even to say like any of this would happen. I just feel like because we made that big accommodation by moving me physically, like that was the biggest thing. And it's largely been fine. So why rock the boat, I guess, any further? In that tone, the other thing I realized is I feel like it's very common that people will assume that you always want to get promoted and go into the next position or whatever. And I remember having a really long, I thought about this for months because, you know, I'm thinking about hearing about some of these other people with autism on the spectrum that were saying, you know what? I decided I didn't need to be management and it's not worth my stress or my peace. So going back to setting the boundary of peace to keep moving up the ranks. And I went, huh. You know, I've been kind of saying to my brother lately, like, it's kind of nice because my last position, I was a manager, that I'm not in charge and that I can, you know, just either do my 40 and clock out or go, I'll work a little bit of overtime. Like, I do have a lot more control over my work-life balance. And I do see where, yes, my boss's salary, and granted, she makes essentially double, maybe a fuzz over double what I make. To some people, working extra hours to the extent that she works extra hours might be worth making that much money. I am not there, and at least not in this phase of life. And so I sat on that thought for a while, like for a few months before I sat down and, you know, we have these weekly one-on-ones. And, you know, yes, it's kind of touch base on any challenges you have going on or any projects you want to discuss, whatever. But you can also have these career discussions. And so after I thought about it a while, I went, well, this is the time to have this conversation with the vice president that we report up into. So I told him, I said, hey, listen, if something happens to my boss, and for context, she's probably not that far away from retirement. I don't know her exact age. I just believe it's like late 50s. Her husband is retiring this year. So realistically, this is a thing to start being concerned about, especially for someone who has 30 years of experience in the field. And I'm still, I don't want to say baby in the space, but I've really only been in this type of like dedicated to this job function position for 2 years now. And while I have learned a lot, I've also learned I still have a shit ton to learn more. it is just one of those industries where there is stuff going on all the time. New things to learn, new regulations, all sorts of stuff, always coming down the pipeline. So I went, okay, well, we need to have this conversation because I recognize that, she, could retire sooner. I don't know what her financial planning is. She could win the lottery. So I said, hey, we need to talk about this, and I want to have an honest conversation in that I understand there's different levels to my specialist role, and I think I'm comfortable with that and staying essentially non-exempt salary, which there's a slight nuance between non-exempt salary and being hourly. So for argument's sake, I'm hourly. And I told him, I'm like, I don't want that for the foreseeable future to move into a salary position, whether it's manager, director, whatever the level is. I would like to cap myself as at senior specialist level once I get to that part, because it's like level 1, 2, 3 senior is how the industry recognizes my particular position. And I'm glad I brought it up because I was like, this is also me taking care of my autism and like just making myself the priority and having that balance at this phase in my life. Also, last year was a bit of a dumpster fire personally. So like, I just had a lot going on, and I really appreciated having that space to cut it off at 40 and go take care of whatever needed to be taken care of and all that sort of stuff. So when I mentioned that, he went, no, this is actually, because I was like, I don't know how this is going to be received. It's not that I don't appreciate anything. I wanted to make it known that I was wanting to cap myself for now. And so he was very actually appreciative of this, because it was like, no, it's good to know that I'm not going to push you into something you're not ready for. Conversely, if you had been chomping at the bit for more information, that I'm not holding you back. And also, if something did happen and I hired above you, that you're not going to be upset by it. And I'm like, no, absolutely not. It was a very tough conversation, but it's important to have, especially if you're even kind of feeling that way. And I know there's a lot of stories going around where people are basically forced into promotions and end up leaving the company anyway. And I know you can only do so much in those situations, but at least I can do my best to preempt what I want and at least make that known. So then that way, if I don't even know what the wrong side of this is, so I'm just going to make up what the wrong side is. So that way, if what I wanted to have happen does not happen, and they decide to, force promote me or whatever, they're not surprised when I leave, or if they are, that's incredibly foolish. So I'm doing the best I can to put as much of my career and what I want in my own hands and what I think is going to be the best for me. So I think that was a very important discovery, because I think I still would have gone on of like, well, nope, eventually, I'm supposed to work into this director role, and that's just what's going to happen. And, again, if my immediate boss, if she decided that, she was going to retire sooner rather than later, could I do it? Yes. It would not be fun. It would be straight up not a good time. I would feel like I would be very stressed bringing on that steep learning curve. And I would rather mitigate that now and just know it's not for me. And I'm glad that I really took the time to think about it and make sure that I wasn't going to put myself in that position if that's not what I really want. I don't feel the need to have a title. I don't feel, as long as I'm making a wage where I'm comfortable, that's really all that matters to me at this point, and having that work-life balance. And then also it gives me time to, work on YouTube selfishly. Somewhat in that tone is something I'm starting to learn, which feels uncomfortable and I don't know why, but it's just the idea that I don't have to have all the answers all the time. I don't need to know everything all the time, whether it's work related or whatever. It is 100% okay to tell someone, I'm going to have to get back to you on that because I just don't know, instead of like floundering in the moment. That was something that I have gotten a lot stronger at learning this year, and just being like, you know what, give me a day or two, or however long I think it might take me to figure it out, or call my boss if it's a work-related thing that I think she might know. I don't have to know everything. Like, the answers of the world are not on my shoulders. And even that feels difficult because it's like, okay, but I want to save all the cats, but I want to save all of the dogs. I want to, like, you know, we put so much on ourselves, and really we can only do so much and just do the best we can. And that's fine. A lot of people are perfectly okay with that, and okay with that as an answer. And that was really weird for me to get accustomed to. I feel like this is a topic that comes up a lot in these, like, 40 and over, YouTube, whatever, or 60 and over, 50 and older, whatever the case is. However, other people title these, like, YouTube journey things, is like, just do the dang thing. And it doesn't matter if you're 40 or 42 or 50 or 60 or 22, or just old enough to have your parents say, yeah, you can start a channel, which I would recommend you do a faceless channel if you're underage, just my personal opinion. But just doing the dang thing. Everybody is so wrapped up in their own world that they don't think about you as much as you think they think about you. Did I say that right? They don't think about you as much as you think they think about you. What I mean by that is, like, no one cares. I used to, like, close the curtains and, like, try to do a ring light, and then it would just not be the same. I have the curtains open right now, and we're doing it's gray light because it's, January. Yeah, no one cares. So I've seen people already kind of out of the corner of my eye walking their dog, taking their sleds up to the hill because, it's snowing, so sledding. And yeah, no one cares. And even, like, if my neighbor sees that I'm sitting in my living room with a camera set up or whatever, just happens to notice it, because I don't sit super far back off the road. And this is a pretty big picture window, I don't want to say in front of us, but kind of off to the side of me, that, you could see in if you really are paying attention. I just don't think he would be like, oh yeah, that silly YouTuber, or, oh, it's stupid her trying to start a YouTube channel. Heck, for all I know, he might be like, man, I wish I would have thought to start a YouTube channel. Maybe he thinks I'm recording something for work. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't think about it at all. It's just like, that's weird. And moves about his day. Maybe he never notices. I don't know. So, or any of the neighbors that have gone by, I don't think any of them even looked in. At the end of the day, like, do what makes you happy. And I'm doing the dang thing. And you know what? If you're not paying my bills, it genuinely doesn't matter if you care about what I do in my spare time, whether this is a hobby channel or whether I'm monetized and making money, whether I want to be like a big YouTube, I hate the word influencer, so a big YouTube name or channel in the crochet space and knitting space. I'm doing whatever the heck makes me happy. And what makes me happiest is, working on knitting and crocheting and getting to hang out with you. And so that's what I'm doing. 42 was a year where I also took a lot of stock in my health. I started working on weight loss. For full transparency, I am on semaglutide, and that was based on the fact that I started seeing a functional medicine doctor, which I wish I had done sooner. I didn't know it was even a thing until this year. And it was based on my labs and me actually communicating what is going wrong with me and where I feel deficient and crappy and whatever. And so when I explained that, yes, I have been trying to, like, eat better and exercise and do all the things that you're supposed to do to lose weight. And what was frustrating to me was I had done it before and done it successfully. And then, depression and everything, put the weight back on. But this time around, it's so much harder. And the other fascinating thing to me was that if I did the tiniest bit of exercise, I would feel like then the days following, I would be insanely disproportionately hungry, like irrationally. I could, like, bottomless pit hunger, like, I have to eat. And so that was something we talked about. And it's like, yeah, no, you are a perfect candidate based on this. There could be other reasons and traits that you might get put on semaglutide. So obviously, it's been helping with my weight loss. It's been helping with making sure I'm appropriately hungry because I'm appropriately dosed. I'm not on a standard dose that comes in a pre-filled pen. We monitor and watch my dosing based on how I feel all the time. It is an open conversation. Anything that is any of those like Groupon-y, this is your program, it's a cookie cutter, this is how you're supposed to do like an Ozempic or Wegovy or any of those, I think you should run away from immediately because that's where I feel like a lot of people get in trouble or they're just not listening and, using more than they should be using, unfortunately. I'm really glad I spent the time to understand how these work fully and that I found someone responsible. And so we're working on everything, and it's not just the semaglutide. There's other things we're working on. I've cut out food dyes, specifically Red 40. I did see recently where Red 3 was banned, so hopefully Red 40 is not far behind. So, and unfortunately that does mean there are things that, I had in my pantry that I ended up getting rid of. By and large, a lot of the food, like, I would go through it, and as, like, I would go through it, I just wouldn't repurchase it if it's highly processed. So getting rid of highly processed stuff, the artificial food dyes, I think that's really helped with my irritability a lot, and I've heard that's not uncommon that especially the red food dyes have a tendency to make people irritable. But now we're working on a lot of the other toxins and reducing toxic load, which it's a lot and it's a process, and we're just slowly going through that. So really putting my health first and not being so like, whatever, I'm a child of the 80s, I'm doomed anyway. I really had a wake-up call of like, yeah, no, let's not get so cavalier about it. Seed oils are going out of my diet, vegetable oils, sugars, any kind of gums, the xanthan and guar gums. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Those are largely out of my diet, or I just read the label and make sure it's like a speck of a speck in there. Yeah, just a lot of junk is getting cut out. That was also largely because I have a really good friend who just turned 50 last week. Yeah, last week. And unfortunately, and I knew this since last year, we knew this, he's in stage 4 and it will be likely his last birthday. And the last at least 6 months or so in particular have been miserable. Not that it's been a cakewalk before he got moved into stage 4, but what can I do to mitigate it and not have that happen to me at such a young age, if at all possible? I know I can only control so much, but I want to at least have a fighting chance of being healthy, of not having the last few years of my life that, in my 40s, like even in my late 40s, I should be vibrant and healthy and energetic and not, miserable and bedridden and unable to work and all of the things that he used to love to do that he hasn't been able to. And that was my wake-up call of like, I can do better and I can at least try and do the best I can. So there was that. I had lost my soul cat at the beginning of being 42. That was really hard. And oh boy, that's been a huge struggle this last year. I also had another huge loss, which I haven't talked about yet on this channel. It will be its own dedicated thing. I just haven't felt ready to mention it. I don't feel like I'm trying to hide it. I'm just not ready to talk about it. But when I am, I think it is worth talking about. That said, I've also really learned it's okay to not be okay, to sit in my emotions. And even when I had this most recent loss, I remember someone from work was like, oh my gosh, you know what? Two of us, you know what? We can take we can take PTO today. We're going to come and get you. We can go to lunch, all this stuff. And I was like, no. They're like, no, but you need it. And I'm like, no, it's okay for me to sit here and experience the feelings. And that was actually something I had cut out earlier around April. I got rid of alcohol for the most part. I think I had champagne on New Year's. When else have I had a drink? Just random spurts here and there, and I've been totally fine with it. I feel like my relationship with alcohol has completely changed, and that has actually helped because it's helping me feel my feelings instead of constantly drowning them, and then the feelings still come out later because you didn't actually process them. And that was huge for me, that I don't always have to be happy-go-lucky and, just skipping and sunshine and rainbows or whatever, or pretend to be that way. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to sit in it's okay to sit in your feelings and process them. And related to that is I was struggling with, feeling crappy and upset and, crying every 5 minutes at the drop of a hat because, I had lost someone very important to me. And I remembered reaching out to another creator. She's actually more active, I believe, on Instagram. So she has this group of like, hey, let's just all kind of like have a space where we can talk about, how to do social media things, whatever. And I was like, hey, I've been kind of quiet in this chat and I'm just curious how everyone deals with when things suck. Because I feel like so many channels just keep going and going and going. And you're like, does anything real ever happen to them? And it doesn't mean that I don't want to share that with someone. I just may not be ready, and it just may be hard dealing with the feelings. And so actually this other creator, who I won't name them just in case there's anything recognizable about it, she was like, I've actually been in a really sucky part of life as well. I've really been going through it. And this is someone who posts very consistently, like way more often than I do. So that's why I was like, really? And that surprises me. And she goes, well, here's the thing, is I look at it as I'm going through this crappy time. And so I'm seeking out distraction and an escape from this crappy stuff. And so wouldn't it be wonderful if I can still create my videos or reels or whatever the case may be? And so if someone else is going through something, they also get that, couple minutes of distraction, however long they decide that they're going to scroll or whatever. And I was like, I hadn't thought about that. And it really made it easier to go, you know what? I don't have to feel 100% the best, but if I think about it as I might be helping someone by just providing a little bit of entertainment and sitting with you, that to me was worth going, okay, let's, brush off the tears, maybe put on makeup, maybe not, but I'm going to make a video and I'm still going to post it, where I feel like had I not had that connection, I would have felt like I would have probably taken a longer break than I would have wanted to, and or I might not have come back at all just because I know me. And sometimes when I wallow a little bit too hard, and I was trying to get out of that habit. So I think emotional intelligence has been huge for me this year. And that's It doesn't mean you're not allowed to have the emotion. It's really about listening to the signals and then just proceeding accordingly. And it doesn't minimize what you're going through or anything like that. It just it just is its own thing in space, and learning how to compartmentalize better. And I think that would probably be one of the biggest lessons, is just really listening to myself more, but also understanding, I want to say, is it a German word? It's called Sonder. Like, you can still be empathetic and still remember, hey, other people might be going through stuff too. Like, I think an example that I saw of this was, like, you might be sitting in traffic and, I'm guilty of this, being like, oh, this jerk, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to drive. Aren't they even paying attention? And then it's like, but you don't know. Like, here I am, like, I'm upset about stuff in my life. Maybe they're in the thick of it too. I don't know. So that has given me, like, that has elevated my empathy level and my own stress level, really. Like, not elevated my stress, but it's really helped my own stress by not getting to, like, oh, this person or blah, blah, blah. I can't believe, like, it's not always about them. And maybe it is. I don't know. There are people that are probably just jerks, but I still am the rose-colored glasses kind of person who wants to see the best in other people and assume the best in others. And it does help bring that lens back to it, because yeah, there are those sucky people, but I do think by and large, the vast majority of people are good people. They want to be good people. We just all have bad days and bad emotions and sometimes bad reactions or judgment calls or whatever. So those are just some of the biggest takeaways I have learned throughout the year of being 42 and going into 43 so much stronger than I ever imagined. I had no idea that this would have been this much growth in just a year's amount of time. Like, part of me is kind of like, oh, it'd be great to grow even more at 43. And part of me is kind of like, okay, but can I have a break? Can we not get tested all the time? I don't know what's in store for 43, but I do feel so much better equipped to handle whatever life might throw at me, although back to, I wouldn't mind a little bit of a break. I am so glad you decided to hang out with me today, and I cannot wait to visit with you next time. Bye!